All right, so by now you know that ASAP Rocky went to trial and he ended up beating his case. But in this video, I want to talk about the difficult decision that he faced in terms of taking his case to trial when you're facing a significant amount of time. All right, so I want to welcome you back. If you watched some of my videos before, if you haven't, my name is Jamahl Kersey. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing law for over 15 years. And on this channel, we're breaking down legal concepts so you're in the know. All right, so ASAP Rocky was facing 24 years in prison. He had been charged with assault with a firearm, and basically it had to do with two childhood friends in ASAP Rocky and ASAP Relli. They both were in the ASAP crew, a bunch of rappers. Obviously, ASAP Rocky was the most successful of the bunch. You also have ASAP Ferg, who was successful in his own right. But there had been some back and forth, a little beef in between ASAP Rocky and ASAP Relli. And sometimes this happens, right? When somebody blows up or somebody makes it and you have, the guys who kind of feel like they straggled behind and they didn't get to come along for the ride in the sense in the way that they felt like they should have. And there can breed resentment and jealousy and all kinds of other negative emotions. And it sounds like that's what happened here, right? And so we end up having some sort of confrontation leading to a scuffle, and ASAP Relli accused ASAP Rocky of basically firing a gun at him. He had said that the bullet miraculously missed his body, but grazed his grazed his knuckles, and so obviously ASAP Rocky ended up getting arrested and charged with a serious felony. And to be honest with you, I hadn't even known that this case was going on until, I heard that he was about to go to trial. I was like, man, this thing kind of went under the radar for me. But interestingly enough, ASAP Rocky, there was an offer on the table, and the offer was for 6 months in jail, and then he would be on probation for a few years. And when you think about it, and you probably don't know the quote unquote value of cases, but typically the DA is going to make an offer, right? And that's going to be an incentive for the person to take a deal versus go to trial. And there has to be these offers, right? Because if everybody said, no, I'm taking my case to trial, then the whole system would grind to a halt because there just wouldn't be enough courtrooms and jurors and judges in order to try all these cases. And so in order for the system to properly work, there has to be, beyond that, not every case has business going to trial, right? If your guilt is relatively obvious, right, then why make the government go through the motions of proving you're guilty, right? And so when they make these offers, it's to incentivize you to take the deal versus go to trial. So typically the amount of time they're going to be offering you is going to be less, and sometimes significantly less, than if you were to go to trial and get found guilty and get the max sentence. So in this situation, the max was 24 years in prison. And really the max, the worst case scenario, almost never happens. So let's just say he somehow were found guilty, right? If the jury found him guilty of the assault with a firearm, I doubt a judge would sentence him to 24 years in prison. If for no other reason than, the harm was pretty minimal, right? At worst, ASAP Relli, he had the grazing of the bullets. Now, if a bullet had hit a major organ, or if there otherwise, was some sort of penetration, then that would certainly make the case more serious. But and that's not to say that he wouldn't have possibly done prison time, but it certainly wouldn't have been 24 years. But nonetheless, I mean, it was prison time that he was facing. And so ASAP Rocky was in the difficult position of deciding, do I take my case to trial or do I take this deal, right? And that had to be something that he and his lawyers sat down and considered. And obviously they ultimately made the decision to go to trial, and that turned out to be the right one. But it can be a difficult decision to make, right? Because if any lawyer is being honest, it doesn't matter how solid you feel like your defense is, you cannot ethically guarantee your client that you guys are going to get the acquittal, that you guys are going to win. And so it's difficult, and oftentimes clients can get frustrated with the lawyer type answers because they want more certainty. Like, what is the likelihood of success? Can you give me a percentage chance? What are the odds? And really you just end up having to go back to, hey, listen, this is what the law says. In this particular case, ASAP Rocky's position was that, listen, I didn't shoot at this guy, right? It turned out that there was testimony from two of his boys who said that this wasn't even a firearm. This was not a firearm. This was a starter pistol that he carries around for protection. And, that makes sense, right? If you have a gun on you, and oftentimes, these prop guns, they look like actual firearms, and if somebody's messing with you, you flash the little prop gun, that can really die down a lot of things. Now that obviously could backfire too, right? If you're flashing a pop gun and somebody has a real gun, then that could create some problems for you. But nonetheless, these two individuals testified that the gun that ASAP Rocky had on him was not a firearm, it was a prop gun. And so you cannot commit an assault with a firearm if you don't even have a real firearm on your person, right? And so there was security camera footage that had captured audio that did capture the sound of the shots, apparently. But again, if it wasn't an actual firearm, then that was going to be problematic for the prosecution's case, and obviously it was. Another issue was the fact that ASAP Relli was the one who ended up turning in the shell casings to the police versus, the police responded to the incident and they did their investigation and they didn't find anything, but yet miraculously ASAP Relli comes to the station with shell casings in hand saying, hey, I found them, right? Further compounding the issue was the fact that ASAP Relli was going to file or had already filed a civil lawsuit against ASAP Rocky. And so whenever there's money involved, whenever the person has a financial interest in the outcome of the case, then that's going to be something that the jury is able to consider. As far as analyzing a witness's credibility, they're able to, as part of the instructions, it says, does the witness have some sort of personal interest in the outcome of this case? And so obviously if he's got a civil matter coming around, then he absolutely has a personal interest, because if he can win on the criminal case, or if there's a conviction, then that's going to be all the more ammunition that he's able to use in his civil case in order to get paid. And so the defense's position was like, nah, this dude is a jealous guy who's just trying to get paid. He's making up this whole story in order to get money from his rich former friend. And so obviously everything ended up working out for ASAP Rocky, and that's amazing. But it can be a difficult situation when you're weighing the decision. Do I go to trial and risk having to do prison time, or do I take this deal where, only 6 months, and you're only going to do a part of that time, right? You're only going to do a percentage of that time. And, given that it's LA has jail overcrowding, he might have only ended up doing a couple months of that 6-month sentence. So for somebody, if they had done what he was being charged with, then that 6-month jail offer would have been amazing. But for somebody who is innocent and didn't do what they're charged with, then the no offer makes sense, right? But still, especially for people who don't have the vast resources that ASAP Rocky has, for somebody who has a public defender, or somebody who, can, barely afford counsel, and that lawyer doesn't have all the time in the world to spend on the case, it can be nerve-wracking because the lawyer doesn't have the resources to, turn over every stone, to have all the investigation done, to do everything that they can in order to clear the person's name. And so a lot of people, out of desperation, end up taking deals in order, especially if they're in custody, right? If you're in custody and you get a deal and they're like, hey, you sign today, we'll give you time served. Yeah, you're going to end up with a felony on your record, but you get out of jail today. A lot of people, out of desperation, even though they would have had solid defenses, make the decision to take the deal just to get out of custody, out of desperation. And it breaks my heart every time I hear about somebody having done that, when, we look at the discovery, or we talk about the facts of the case, and you realize, like, man, you probably could have taken this to trial and beat this, but I get why you would, why you would fold and decide to take a deal, because you got to get back to your family. You might have kids. You might have had a job that you're trying to hold on to. There's a lot of reasons why a person would end up taking a deal. But for him, on the contrary, it was interesting because the reason that he had given for not taking the deal was some of the business ventures he had going on. Hey, listen, man, I got my modeling stuff. I got the fashion stuff. I got movies. If I end up taking a deal and pleading guilty to a felony, that's going to blow up this whole thing. And, while the average person doesn't have that going on, it can still be the same thing within the job market, right? If you end up taking a deal for a felony and even some misdemeanors, that really can, hinder your ability to either hold on to the job that you have or get a good job in the future. So that absolutely factors in as well. But nonetheless, it still is very nerve-wracking. It can be very scary to end up proceeding to put your case in front of a jury, put your case and your life and your future and your reputation in the hands of 12 random people and have them ideally make the right decision. Obviously, that ended up working out for A$AP Rocky, and that's amazing. But I just wanted to talk about that because that is a situation where, people, find themselves having to make that really difficult decision. And so if you find yourself in that situation or a loved one finds herself in that situation, then it's so vitally important to get on the same page with your lawyer. Ideally, they're doing everything that they can in order to expose the truth and, prepare the case for trial, because sometimes in preparing the case for trial, they're able to give the information over to the DA to tell them why this case should be dismissed versus going to trial. And sometimes when you have worked up the case to the point where you're ready to go to trial, you're able to display the holes in the DA's case. And if they're reasonable, if they're ethical, then sometimes they can take a look at the case and say, okay, all right, we're going to dismiss the case in the interest of justice. And then if that doesn't work out, then you have the case ready to go. You put it on in front of the jury and, you hope and pray that justice is ultimately served. And I'm definitely happy that justice was served for A$AP Rocky. I know he had bailed out, but he's home. He's obviously not going back into custody. He's got beautiful kids to look after. He's got his wonderful partner, Rihanna, and all the business ventures that he had going on and things that, were positive for him. And he continued to be a solid role model for the youth. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions about the situation. If you got something out of this video, show me some love, hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.